Welcome to John Rhodes and Clara Sue's Open Mic Poetry Podcast TV show. There are numerous places on the web where you can visit us. If you are a public access producer and would like to download broadcast quality shows for your city, you can from pegmedia.org. If you are just a viewer and want a rerun, go to mysticbabylon.podomatic.com. I, John Rhodes, have many other sites, including a podcast novel site, which you can find out more about by visiting rhodespoetry.com. For more about the other host, Clara Sue, go to clarasue.com. The show will start shortly.
Welcome to the San Francisco Open Mic Poetry Show. My name is Clara Sue, co-hosting with John Rhodes. And today my guest is Richard Loringer. Hi, Richard.
Howdy.
Thank you for coming.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Richard has been doing poetry performance and visual art all around the United States for over 25 years. He spent 9 years teaching writing and literature in colleges around New York, and now you live in Oakland, California. So, Richard, why don't you teach colleges anymore?
Well, I did it for a bunch of years, and I really enjoyed teaching, and maybe I will again. It's really hard to get a full-time job doing it, and it doesn't pay very well. So eventually I just said, I'm doing something else for a while.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I heard a rumor that that you have some issues with academic poetry. Is that correct?
No, it isn't actually.
Okay.
When I was working, especially when I was teaching a lot, I did interact a lot with people who are writing in academia, and they write a lot of different ways. And actually, I rather lots of people wrote in lots of different ways. I have no issue with that. I did encounter a bunch of a certain amount of attitude, though. People thought that they were writing the only good, best poetry right now, and not just in academia, and that's actually what I have issue with. So that comments on that have gotten misconstrued. So,
and you have your poems to prove it.
Yeah, well, I have some poems. Yeah, words in a certain order.
So let's hear Richard reads.
Okay, thanks. Hi, my name's Richard Loringer. I'm going to share a few poems with you today. The first one is about what I was talking about with Clara, about attitudes people have towards poetry. I think just every so often, every few years, somebody writes a poem like this that's about what they really want to see in poetry right now, or art or whatever. So this is called I Want a Poetry. So tired of reasonable art, of calculated verse, of the funneling of flat lives into safe, attractive, preformed, strategic, decisive, career-driven marketing confections by those who see poetry as a form of poetics and not a form of life and light, no longer poets but poeticists who advance poetry for the sake of poetics. I want another poetry, an incipient poetry, one that doesn't serve the slavish wants of men, but lives to make its own world, own roots, own strange sap. I want a drop of life before I snap, dry twig into the mute oblivion of the self-concerned, full of dry words and minds, dry riverbeds, like the man said, always made up and looking for, only able to look for the same time-proven experiment. I want a poetry that doesn't have to be 8.5 by 11, 12-point Times New Roman, or we won't even look at the freaking thing. I want a poetry that loves every font, even Veltron Urban, Jokerman, and Chick. I want a poetry that runs off the page, across the wall, around the corner, onto the floor, leaps out the window, and into the street where it goes for a stroll, meets new friends, takes a wrong turn, and finds something shiny on the curb. I want a poetry that shines. I want a poetry that jerks my eyes, opens my mouth, and crawls inside. I want a raw poetry, a raw meat poetry, a live, perfect song to eat for the future of everything poetry, nutritive blend of satyr and aesthete, subtle breath, roaring blood, your future, my future. I want a living poetry. We've heard this before, of course, of the same course in which a species thrives. We hear it every time a poet bears a child imbued with the next writhing, lovely flesh-mind seed. I want a sexy poetry. What other kind is there? One that knows its urge and damns all else, the kind that says, let's just touch. I want a poetry that says hello no matter what, that does what it does because it does, that doesn't give a damn who I am or what you are, doesn't try to tell me who you are or what I am, that just says hello, that just says let's touch and parts the vestigial veil. I want a poetry that tears veils, shreds artifice, bashes bombast, batters preconception, that cracks the walls long taught by those who gain from human separation, that unlearns the craven crackhead hate, that unidentifies with shape and face and blood and finds the greater bond. I want a true mammalian poetry, charged with compassion, successful in community, patient with clash, bored with the mindless drool-soaked wanna be lizard, throat lock me, big gimme baby goo goo competition caca. I want a poetry that shuns the dangerous infants and walks on into a clear field, post-rain, sweet being air, yes, this is it. I want a poetry that runs out into the rain, arms flung wide, whirls mad in the spray, and stands panting, soaked and soaking, finding its feet in the solid world. I want a poetry that takes a dump in the woods, smells dirt, loves flesh, charges into space, not mauling and crawling, but with the sheer certainty of the alive, cocksure and confident, calm and secure and in motion, and when the lies hit the skies, rearing and leering. I want a poetry with gall, with torque, with fire, with heart so big and trust so strong it grows my heart, my trust, grown so timid and lodged in its rut, it needs a speeding truck, careening train, a poetry with torque to knock it back to firm resolve and dauntless joy. I want a poetry that kicks my ass. Not because it wants to, not because it craves the prey, but because it has no choice, because its very nature, pure and effluvious, is to knock one upside the head, back into the stream, to kick one into the next life. I want a poetry that kicks living ass. I want a poetry with epiphany that breaks my fast, has epiphany for lunch, dinner, and several midnight snacks, burps epiphany all night long, then goes on to dream an epiphany huge and bursting, birthing 100 more. I want a poetry that spews all over the place, makes you dance around if you don't want to ruin your shoes, makes you run for cover if you don't want to change, overtakes you with a new song, seduces you with an untaught sense of right, and gives you leave to lead yourself back out into light. I want a poetry that flops on the floor, mouth gaped, eyes shone, uvula ululating, all the world pouring from its core. I want an epiphanic poetry. Thank you. That's a poem. So I've been writing a little series. I like to write series, and just lately I'm writing one that's poems about everyday things, things we do every day, very mundane things, but they're kind of ecstatic. So I thought I'd read one of those. This is a new poem called Laundry. I had forgotten the pleasures of laundry, and now I am re-finding them. Such a sensuous stretch of the day, hour-long breath. 30 minutes inhaling, 30 leisurely out. Luxurious veldt of time, teasing an open line of potencies, but even more essential lime, I, seraph, canticle, I watch the tumble, hear the daring spin, watch the ardent tumble, the methodical, the caption, the result, the blur, the intermingling of all my lives. Hear the universal whir, the whir, sphere whir, Dante be damned, permeate, please with me, parse the private day, leave caterwaul behind and seethe, please, ride the whir, tumble into nautical and sigh eyes to method, to ardent, to canticle, to permeate, to wear. I had forgotten the sheer pleasure of laundry, and now I am re-sheening them. The cycle releases. The cycle begins. How man is that? How human? How mammal? How animal? How is? Breathe the furtive turn. Breathe and spin into a newborn, whim-sanctioned child. Tumbling time into the perfect play, the possible ratcheting, the undine box of mind and fray, opening the cloth of all our lives to the soft seams of reeve, and catenating day to day a ring of woven dreams that bear us bright and shaking to the damp heart of clean. Thanks. I like that new series. I like writing series. I have a book called Poems for Teeth. That's a series. You can find a book of poems called Hello. That's a series of poems that say hello. You can find more about that on my publisher's website. And that's wepress.org. And I'll just end with a few hello poems. Hi, how are you? I'm fine, thanks. And you? I forget. Oh, okay, bye. Hi, how are you? I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure I'll be okay. Hi, how are you? Absolutely content. I'm not sure how to respond to that. And I'll leave you with that. How's that? Thanks for having me. And say hello to someone.
Thank you, Richard Loringer. Now I would like to read a couple poems, since it is International Women's Month. I would like to read two poems about women. The first one is titled Midday Rose. Ever since I pry open your mouth and force the milk teeth to fall, you obediently gather the ancestors and ask for their blessings. Blush with joy, your belly swells, between the vulva squeezes a pearl. How I want to claim you then and set you above all things that touch me. But with each ebbing of the moon, you turn paler and distant. Oh, I wish I could comprehend the desperation that haunts you. 10,000 lineages scorn and weep at your nature, and your pearl is not good enough as a token for your release. But instead of succumbing, your silent song grows louder than thunder until the nooks fling your laughter above the wind. You put your arms around the sages and kiss them on the cheeks. When feebly I protest, I realize you have savored your roots. You become the beginning, as novel as the origin of the universe, and not merely a rose that blooms and wilts in the midday sun. Thank you for listening and tuning in. My name is Clara Sue, co-hosting with John Rhodes for the San Francisco Open Mic Poetry. Thank you.